So what I like to do here is I like to break my hoses loose. I like to lift the cylinder so that the rod's all the way in it, and then plug off the barrel end of it, leave the barrel end open and plug off the barrel end line. Then try to let gravity take the outrigger down so it squeezes all that oil back in the hydraulic system, so if you get pretty decent at it, you only lose about a gallon of oil rather than losing 5 gallons of oil. That's what I always try to do. So first thing we'll have to do is suck that cylinder up, and then we'll plug off that line real quick. So we're going to use these O-ring face plugs to plug the line off with. We're going to leave the barrel open so it can get air so that the cylinder can gravity down. One thing you want to watch when you do an outrigger is you want to make sure that chrome rod's not got a lot of scarring on it, because I'll tell you, they take a beating, they really do. Let's see if we can get it to gravity down now. This is a New Holland backhoe, and we built a tool. We built this tool right here. It's got 1/2-inch pins that fit the head gland. It's adjustable however big the head gland is, and it's plenty strong enough for, we use this great big cheater pipe right here. It's plenty strong enough for a big cheater pipe. The case backhoe, this is an OTC, where did I see the part number on this thing at? OTC 1266. This is for a case backhoe for the large and the small glands. It's 3/4 inch drive. I've had this tool for 30 years and I haven't tore it up yet. It's actually got little set screws that you can replace these bits if you break them, but I've never broke one yet, and I've had some pretty monstrous loads on them. That it's really a good tool. But they go right in the head gland. Put your 3/4 drive on there and turn them. Now the case backhoe, they put a little set screw right between the head gland and the barrel. So you really got to be careful right here, because you always want to run your hand around that end of that barrel and make sure that there's no set screw in there. And sometimes you'll see where they actually drill that barrel and they put a little Allen plug in there where it goes in and it locks down on the threads to keep the threads from turning, keeping it from backing off. If that thing's in there and you go to start trying to turn that head gland, then you start screwing the threads up and you'll never get it apart by the time you get it out of there. So you want to really make sure there's no screw or there's no Allen screw or anything in that head gland when you take that head gland off of there. This little guy here is for little bitty cylinders, and it's a 1/2-inch drive, where this one's 3/4 inch drive, and this one just is homemade basically. You can see where we cut our metal and added a little tab and then welded 1/2-inch pins in it. But you know, that's what it takes to get the job done. That's what we do. I usually like to take a hammer and hit on this head gland in 4 different places just to kind of rattle that head gland loose. I also like to tap around the barrel. You don't have to beat it up, just tap around the barrel and shake that loose so that your tool doesn't take the blunt of it. If you ever get a hydraulic hose or something like this one right here, and this hydraulic hose is so tight that you can't get it off, If you just take a hammer and hit on that nut on 2 or 3 different sides and give her a couple of good thumps, usually it'll just come off with your finger. So it does a lot of good when you just shake that thread just a little bit. So let's get this tool in here and let's see about getting this head gland off of here. Get our cheater pipe. Sometimes they're really on there, sometimes they're not. But that one wasn't too bad. So you get it accordingly. Get her enough where I can run it out by hand, then we'll get that other hose off of there. Oh yeah, get that other hose off and plugged right here. We'll put something in here to catch our oil with. So hopefully we'll only lost, by plugging them lines and running it with the cylinder like that, hopefully we've only lost about 1 gallon of oil. So that'd be great if we only lose 1 gallon. Now get her to the point where that oil starts coming out just a little bit at a time. And that way we can catch it and put it in the waste oil container. We're going to get this pair of duckbill pliers and get this snap ring off of this pin right here. All the way on the bottom, never fails. Never fails, all the way on the bottom. Yeah, buddy, them are hefty. You see how hefty of a ring that is. That's pretty hefty. We'll drive that pin out. Like that. Like that. Get rid of the rest of this oil here. It's always nice when you can leave the barrel anywhere you can leave the barrel without taking off. There's no reason to take that off unless that you had to change that barrel and it's scarred, or you can't get it apart and you have to take it someplace and put it on a machine to get it apart. There's really no reason to pull that barrel off of there if you're just repacking that cylinder. And there she is. We'll get ready to take this in the shop and we'll disassemble this bolt on the end of here, get that piston off, and get her all tore apart. Since I don't have no parts for it, I'll take a garbage bag, wrap around the end of this barrel and tape it real good, so that way no varmint can crawl up inside my hydraulic tube or messed me up. Something I went through the other day with a machine that had a blowed hose on it, and I'm going to tell you how the easiest way to find a blowed hose. You never ever want to be having a machine running and you to be down in there with your hand looking for something, because if that oil gets blowed in underneath your skin, it'll kill you. So don't ever do that. If you got a bad hose someplace and you know the general vicinity of where it's at, get in there with some rags and shut the machine off. Get in there with some rags and clean all that stuff up as best you can. And what I like to do is to take a nice leather glove and put on a nice leather glove and get 2 paper shop towels like this. Wrap your hands around that paper shop towels and grab a hold of them hoses and just start pulling your hand on them hoses real lightly and real easily. If there's a blown hose, that steel's going to be hanging out of that hose and it's going to snag that shop towel, and you're going to know exactly where that hose is blown at. So always make sure it's shut off, always try to clean it out, and then get down there with a glove and some paper towels and run your hand down those hoses until you find one that's got a hole snagged in it where it's, you know that it's bad. It's just called being smart. Don't ever go hunting for a leak with the machine running in your hands. Don't ever do that. I've heard horror stories about people that have done that, and that's just, man, you just don't want to go there. Not good. So be very careful. You always need to be careful. If you're not careful, nobody looks out for you but you. So be careful. It just works really good. Get that baby snugged up in that vise. Me and that old vise has been together for almost over 30 years. And I'll tell you what, I have beat on that thing with my hammer George here. And I've never tore it up. It's one tough vise. It's an old reed. Boy, it's a good one. So, 1-inch breaker bar, worth their weight in gold, especially when you come up to something that's, you got to get it broke loose and you don't have a cylinder machine handy, so just got it. Oh, I think we're gonna have to put a cheater on that one. No good either, especially if you're out in the field. Love that Milwaukee 3/4 drive. So there's your bolt. Here's your piston, 2 bearings and seal. Here's your head gland, cylinder head gland, and the packing and the seal and everything. I'm going to show you this little tool I made. It's a broken off Matco punch, and I ground it all flat in one direction. You see the back of it's got a little radius on here. But for taking out that metal back wiper on the very outside edge, you can get right down up against that and take that little edge and roll that down just a little bit and get right in there and get that out with a screwdriver. And it just, you don't damage the head gland, and it usually comes right out of there like that. So you just get behind that lip and roll it over with this little homemade punch. So handy. I should have made that 35 years ago. Anyhow, I figured I'd better show you this, so if you didn't see the other video, you can watch it on this one. I bought this set of picks long time ago, ARES. And it comes in a little kit. It's got a handle you add onto it. You talk about nice. I've been beating on these things for a long time, and I haven't broke one yet. I've got some Milwaukees. They're alright, but you snap that handle in there, now I'll tell you, you got some leverage with that. So you go in here and go after this U-cup. Get that U-cup pried out of there. Talk about rotten. Whoo-wee. This old girl here is rotten. Look at that. Just absolutely rotten. That was a U-cup. Trying to be stubborn on me. There's your intermediate seal. And then the bearing on the bottom. Everything wants to be contrary today. Sometimes they fall out, and sometimes they don't. This one here is being a little bit stubborn. We will prevail though. So there's your bearing on the bottom. Then you've just got an O-ring and a backup ring. Take the O-ring off of there. Take the backup ring off of there. And then you need to get this head gland all cleaned up, where the outer seal goes, where the U-cup goes, the inner seal and the bearing. Get all that cleaned up. This particular cylinder, it's kind of strange how they made this. You can't buy this. You have to buy a whole nother piston and go back together with a different piston. It's all part of the packing. So and we had to get a new piston. They changed the design of the piston and the seals. So, oh well, we changed the whole piston. So the first place we're going to start is the head gland here. And we're going to start in the middle and work our way out. So this center groove right in here is the first seal that we're going to put in. And it's a two-piece seal. It looks like a miniature U-cup with a backup ring behind it. So we're going to sneak that down in there first. I saved you all the painstaking misery of cleaning the head gland all out. You got to have it nice and clean when you go to put that stuff in there. Don't want no pieces of an old seal or anything laying down in there. Get it started and work it around, and make sure that, you know, run your finger around it once you get it in there. Make sure that it's sitting where it belongs, which it is. Now we'll take this little backup ring and we're going to go right down on top of that in the same groove. Set it in there. Do the same thing, work it around nice and easy. Make sure that you don't have a kink in it or a twist in it. Run your finger around it and make sure it's sitting in there pretty. Just like that right there. Next one we're going to put in is this groove right here, which will be the U-cup groove. Now these U-cups are stiff. So we're going to have to use a U-cup tool to put it in there because it is really, really stiff. So put your U-cup tool, always put the U to the bottom. Put your U-cup tool on here, wind it up. I like to keep it right on the bottom there, and wind it up and hang on to it because it is a stiff one. And when you get it all wound up, it's going to look like that right there. And you're going to go right down in that groove and you're going to set it down in there nice and easy and get it started in the groove, and then let that U-cup tool unwind. When it gets unwound, pull it up, run your finger around it, make sure it's sitting in there pretty, just like that. You're good to go. Next is the bearing. Sits in the last big fat groove. Fold it inside of itself just a little bit. Set it down in a hole. That's usually the easiest way to put it in there. It'll snap into place. Make sure that it's nice and flat all the way around the inside, just like that. Next one we're going to put on is we're going to put on the the outer, which was an O-ring and a backup ring. Now they've came up with this fancy looking thing that looks like an O-ring. It looks like two O-rings made together. That's the first for me. But it sits on that. There's no top and no bottom to it. So just set it in the groove. Wrap it around there. Make sure it's not twisted. Make sure it sits in there pretty like that. And you can see it looks like an O-ring and a backup ring, but it's one piece, not two. So the last piece of the pie for the head gland is the wiper. And we want to put a little bit of Loctite around there. Take your hammer and tap her into place. Always tap on that outside metal backer. Try not to touch the seal if you can. Wipe off the excess Loctite. So there you have it. The head gland's ready to put back together again. The only thing we'll have to do, wipe white lithium grease all over it. Now we got the piston, our new piston. So our new piston's different than our old piston. Machined a little different and everything. I don't know what the purpose of that is, but oh well. So the piston seal on this one comes in 4 pieces. You got your expander on the bottom, your piston seal, and a backer on the top and the bottom that's split open. So your expander goes on first, and always take the short side. So this is your piston seal here, so we're going to go down from this side on the short side. Wrap that baby around there like that. It's centered up in a groove. Make sure it's nice and straight. Now these, you can soak them in hot water, heat them up with a heat gun, whatever you want to do. Today we're going to heat this one with a heat gun. We'll get it set on there, and we'll go from there. I'm going to go ahead and put the one back up on the bottom, so when I put my piston seal on, it doesn't go on too far. So I put him on there like that. So when I'm putting my piston seal on, it'll go down and hit that, and hopefully I got enough room to put the top one on. So let's warm him up just a little bit. Keep turning him as you're warming him up, and you can kind of feel the temperature in your hand as to how hot it's getting. You want it warm, but you don't want to get it too hot, you know. But that'll soften it up enough that it'll go on there pretty for you. Get it started on there. So now that he's on there, the only thing I have to do now is put this other backup ring on there. So set him on there, walk him around, push on him with my fingers, and there it is. Now the only thing we have now is this bearing to put in this groove, which is Just open it up, snap it on, just like that. So there's our piston seals all put on, ready to put on the rod. I like to use white lithium grease. And I put it on the rod and I put it on the head gland. And I like to fill up all the little voids in the head gland, the U-cup, the wiper, everything in there, so everything's lubricated prior to putting it on the rod. Wiper on there nice and pretty. Make sure everything's lubricated really well. Then we're going to slide this head gland. This rod's got a taper on it. So we're going to get that started on there. Tap it on with our hand and slide it on there. Just like that. Wipe that excess off. Set that piston on there. Make sure she's bottomed out like that. We'll lubricate the piston when we get ready to put it back in the barrel. So now we're going to put a little Loctite on that bolt that we just got done squirting off with ether. I'll have to get some more Loctite, looks like. Getting down there. A little dab will do you. Set that bolt on there. Run her up there real quick. Then we'll take our 1-inch breaker bar and we're going to put about the same pressure on it that it was when we took it off. I've got my crutch underneath of my rod so that it's going to be what's going to take all the pressure. That's good, plenty good enough. We'll take these dust caps out. So that when we put the rod back in, it can breathe, you know. All right, we're going to lube up our new seals with some white lubriplate. And we're going to lube the ramp on the inside of that barrel. There's a ramp right on the inside of the barrel there that helps this get started. Get plenty of lube on there. Sometimes you got to give them a little thump with a hammer to get them started up in there. Get this baby all lubed up here and then we'll put him in there. All the cylinders on this hoe are made all the same. The boom cylinder, the stick cylinder, bucket cylinder, loader frame. The only two that are really different is the two swing cylinders for the boom. And they can get a little bit contrary, especially getting them out of there. The way the barrel threads on is kind of different, but once you take it apart, you'll understand how it goes back together again. You get this head gland all screwed on here, and then we're going to put our homemade wrench on there, tighten it back down, and we're going to get it as tight as we can. We don't need that big cheater pipe on there. Once that rubber seal gets in there, it stays there. It don't really move. Oh boy, I'm about out of wind there, so I wish I would have made that tool so that the handle was removable, but you know what, it works. That's all that matters. Like that. That's not going to go anywhere. Not going to go anywhere. We'll put our keeper, our new keeper, in our pin down here. Hook our hoses up, and that's about the end of it. Make sure when you hook your hoses up that O-ring face seal is in your hoses, and you should be good to go. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more of what we do, subscribe to our channel and watch us. We're always doing something. So thanks for watching.